here's what reading this book was like. So I love ice cream sandwiches, and it was like hearing the ding dong cart. So in the US, the ding dong cart is also referred to as the ice cream truck, the ice cream man. When you were a kid in the summertime and you heard that ding dong cart, you started running to find out which street and which neighborhood it was going to stop in first. So, you know, it's like you're running for the ice cream truck, and you're running, and you see kids coming out of houses all over the street, and you're running to get there first, and you can see it, and you get to the ice cream truck, and the minute you feel like you're going to be first in line, you trip over a curb, and you hit your head on the wheel well of the ice cream truck, and the driver feels so bad he panics. He comes running out and he tells you, you can get anything you want for free. Choose anything you want. And you know you're going to choose an ice cream sandwich. So you get up and you turn around and you realize there's 10 other kids in line. So you have to go to the back of the line. You get to the ice cream truck window, and what happens? All of the ice cream sandwiches are gone. George Eliot, you are my ice cream sandwich. George Eliot, voice of a century, you're the ice cream truck. Hey BookTube, it's Kim at Middle of the Book March, and this is my bookish week for December 18th, Saturday, December 18th. So, I finished one book last week, and I'm also going to talk about another book that I finished a couple of weeks ago that I haven't had the chance to review yet. What did I finish? Yes, indeed. I finished George Eliot, Voice of a Century by Frederick R. Carl. Look at this monstrosity. I also have the paperback copy of this, and it really wasn't that much more comfortable to read because it's so dense and so heavy. I just sat at the table and I read this and let the table take care of the book weight. So I finished this. Okay, I gave this 3 stars. I gave it 3 stars for the style of writing, for the author's language, for the sentence structure, for the content that he decided to gather. I am fascinated, and I loved learning more about George Eliot, the person. Her information, her history is just so colorful and so interesting. I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, but the thing that I just, this is a very academic book, let me say that. There was so much minute detail, the minutia. We heard about every single trip that she and George Lewes went on, how many friends came over their house, who the friends were, all of the times and the dates, how many times they went off into the country to this house or that house. And as we know, in Victorian England, there were no street addresses. It was the house had a name. And so the author was name dropping every single one of those country homes that George Eliot and George Lewes stayed in. It was just exhaustive. We heard every single friend's name of Marianne Evans and subsequently George Eliot. It was one thing after another. Every title of all the books they were reading. I felt so bogged down by all of it. And the other thing that really bothered me is the author's tone, if that makes sense. I was really surprised at the amount of material that the author included on all of the other people in George Eliot's life. She was definitely primary, but I thought it was interesting. He spent an inordinate amount of time getting into the backgrounds of her 25-year partner, George Lewes. He spent a lot of time on a lot of other men in George Eliot's life and a lot of their backgrounds and the relationship that they had with her. I thought, she's not coming out to the surface. You're not making her shine in this biography. And I was a little resentful of that. And I think I've said this before, I was a little suspicious going into this book of a female literary giant, of a biography written by a man, an academic. And I kind of think that my suspicions were correct. But what I am going to do is I am going to read the biography of George Eliot and I wish Gordon Haight wrote it, Haight, and that book is referenced in this one. So I'm going to read that book and see what it says. I was really surprised because Carl was making so many assumptions about Eliot's romantic life, her sex life, her sexual proclivities, whether she had a really high sex drive. It was really interesting and odd that he kept bringing that up. Towards the end of her life, he questioned whether she was either bisexual or a lesbian based on the female friendships that she had, based on letters that other women wrote to her, her companions. It was really odd, and he even states in the text that we don't really know for sure, or it may have been, or it may have happened. So I was really surprised by that, maybe not so surprised, but that bothered me. The actual content, aside from the minutia of her life, is fascinating. George Eliot was a literary intellectual, philosophical, somewhat religious in her early life. She surrounded herself with such illuminating people. She was friends with Charles Dickens, with Thackeray, with Henry James. They kind of had an interesting dynamic. Harriet Beecher Stowe was a correspondent with her. They never met, but they wrote back and forth between England and America. So many authors and philosophers that she was not just contemporaries with, but friends with. Her partner of a quarter of a century was George Henry Lewes. And they met when they both wrote for the Westminster Review, a literary journal, and they started a 25-year-long relationship. He was already married. George Eliot never married George Lewes because he never could get a divorce from his wife, Agnes. He and Agnes had 3 or 4 children of their own. And Agnes was having an open affair with Thornton Hunt, who Agnes and Thornton went on to have 4 or 5 children of their own. But because Agnes and George Lewes were still married, George Lewes had to financially support all of those children because by law they were his. And so until the end of her life, George Eliot helped support George Lewes' entire family, his wife and his children. It was so interesting. She was ostracized from good society because of her adulterous partnership. She was kind of kicked out of the London social scene. There were certain people that just didn't care about her living situation, her social life, and they remained friends with her. But that is one of the reasons why she took on the name George Eliot. Mary Ann Evans decided she did not want to be looked at as a typical silly woman writer, and she pissed off a lot of other female writers with that comment. But she also knew that if she put her own name on her books and on her writings, her reputation would precede her, and she would not gain the literary status that she did. So she made people think she was a man, and she made people think she was respectable. So this is such an interesting biography, super long. This is so heavy. I'm going to put this down. It's super dense. It took me forever to read for the reasons that I already shared. There's so much to her life. She was one of the, and possibly still is, one of the most beloved and well-known English authors ever known. And in her lifetime, she was kind of looked at as a national literary treasure. Queen Victoria was a fan. Queen Victoria loved Adam Bede, and when she read Adam Bede, she had certain paintings of scenes in the novel commissioned. Queen Victoria's daughter brought George Eliot for a visit, and for a social visit, and a lunch, I believe. But there were so many things. Charles Dickens was the first person to figure out that she was a female author. And it was her first novel, Scenes of Clerical Life, which was submitted in 3 sections, that Dickens said, this has to be written by a woman. And so he was the first one to guess her identity. It's also interesting, if you look at this picture, she is very well known for not being a very attractive woman. And there's a lot of other pictures in the book that kind of, it's kind of true. and her partner, George Lewes, was also not a very attractive man. And that was a lot of the gossip about them as a couple, is they were ugly. And Henry James said she was so ugly, but when she opened her mouth and spoke, he fell in love with her. And so it was such an interesting story about George Eliot as a person. I loved learning that about her, and I have several other biographies that I do plan on reading. I definitely want to read the Gordon Haight biography and make a comparison. I want to see if Frederick R. Carl has made far too many assumptions about her personal life. And I didn't like how she was not kept at a certain level throughout this book. I felt he did her a little bit of a disservice. So, honestly, I would not recommend just a typical reader to pick up this book. This would be good as a textbook and good to be analyzed through a literature course, but I would not recommend that. It took me months to get up the energy to read it. So, the other book I wanted to review is The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. And Amor Towles is the author of Rules of Civility and A Gentleman in Moscow. This is his third novel, and I read this for my Critical Chick book group, and that's why I haven't reviewed it so far. We were supposed to have a meeting a couple of weeks ago, but one of my dear friends and her whole family got COVID, and she's just recovered. So we're now going to have a Zoom call on Sunday with our group to talk about The Lincoln Highway. This book is it starts off in 1954, and Emmett Watson is a boy that was sent to a juvenile facility for manslaughter. He accidentally killed another peer of his, and he's getting out but at the age of 18. He has a goal. He wants to go back and pick up his younger brother, Billy, who's 8. I think he's 8 at the time. Maybe he's older than that. 8. It says it right here on the dust jacket. Billy is 8, and Emmett wants to pick him up, and he wants to leave town. He wants to pick up his car, take Billy, go on a road trip to California. And there's a lot of family history. History that Emmett and Billy's father has just died. They have lost the family farm. Emmett goes to pick up Billy, and all he wants to do is get the keys to his baby blue. What's the name of the car? Baby blue. What is the name of that car? Not a Thunderbird, maybe. But he has a baby blue jalopy that he repaired, and it's just in pristine condition. There's also a secret hidden in the trunk. So Emmett gets released from his juvenile facility, goes to his family farm to pick up his younger brother, and lo and behold, 2 friends of his from the juvenile facility have escaped and stowed away in the sheriff's trunk, who is the person driving Emmett back to his family home. Plot ensues from there. I'm going to cough. Hold on. And the plot ensues. This is kind of a stereotypical road trip novel. It was okay. And unfortunately, it's a very long book. And that was part of my critique, is it's too long. It was male-centric. There is one female character in the book. There are a couple of very minor female nuns who come into the story, but there's one female character who is the childhood friend and neighbor of Emmett and Billy. She doesn't play that big of a part, and it's almost like, why is she there? This book is a little all over the place. It goes between perspectives, so you read the same situation from each character, Emmett, Billy, and his 2 companions, and their neighbor and friend, Sally. So the chapters alternate with a lot of different perspectives. These 4 young men are on a quest to find something. So they start off in one direction and they end up getting turned around in another direction. There's different things that happen to them along the way. The other thing is there's so many coincidences. There's so many peppered throughout the novel. It would be impossible for any of this stuff to really happen. So I was a little put off by that. the story jumps all over the place because of the different perspectives. It's sometimes difficult to keep track of the time period. There's a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of, journeys into the past to tell someone's backstory. The end of the book, the last 50 pages, was a whirlwind of let's tie this up. We're gonna throw in this plot to tie up the story, the end. And it was just not necessarily a letdown, but kind of a disappointment as to that's the way he chose to end this book. So it was good. It was fine. I think I'm going to give it 3 stars. I was, excuse me, I was interested to pick it up when it was time to read, but it just was not all there for me. So, but it was good enough, if that makes sense. So, what am I doing now? Those are the 2 books I wanted to talk to you about. I'm getting a little bit of Goodreads action here going, so I can talk about the things I have currently going on. What's interesting is I have like 3 audiobooks going on all at the same time, and I don't know, that's really odd for me, but I just felt like it. I just felt like listening to a bunch of audiobooks. The book I'm reading in print that is also going slowly is The Golem and the Jinni by Helene Wecker. I am probably, let's open it up and see. I think I'm about a quarter. Yeah, I'm about a quarter of the way through. This is reading very slow. I like the story, but this is also a book that's too long. The pacing is very off. Some of it is very slow, some of it is fast, but it's not coordinating with each other. There's 2 different stories, The Golem and the Jinni, and I think at one point they're going to converge, but this is going too slow for me, but it's an enjoyable book. I am listening to Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. This book came out years ago. I read it years ago, and it was published, it's a memoir in books, and it was published in 2003. After I read this book, and when I read My Dark Vanessa, I think I'm going to have to pick up Lolita and read that, even though for years I've been avoiding that book for, pretty obvious reasons when you think about it. But I think I might have to pick that up. The other 2, let's see. Oh, I am reading My Year of Rest and Relaxation on my Kindle. That's a Marmite book if I ever heard of one. I'm probably about 75% through that one, and by the time this video goes up, I might already be finished with it, and I'll review it in my next weekend video. Yeah, that one's interesting. I'm also listening to Medical Apartheid, let's see, let me get that title. And this is a long one. Medical Apartheid, The Dark History of Medical Experimentation on Black Americans from Colonial Times to the Present by Harriet A. Washington. Ron Butler narrates the audiobook, and I just started this one, and I'm already pissed off. This is infuriating. But it's history that I was already aware of, and this is definitely giving me more background for that. The other audiobook I just started listening to is Taste My Life Through Food by Stanley Tucci, an actor I love. And if you saw my video reviewing Alan Cummings' book, Not My Father's Son, I think I found a new niche that I really enjoy. It's memoirs by Hollywood actors or artists who are talking about something other than Hollywood. Stanley Tucci's book is about food and his family history with food. He comes from an Italian-American family, and I'm already drooling as I'm listening to this book. It is a joy to listen to, so I just started that one. And for my very last scheduled buddy read of the year, I'm going to be starting this book Saturday, so today. And this is Lauren Groff's Matrix, and I'm going to be reading this novel with Britta Bowler. We're going to start a buddy read Saturday, today, the 18th, and we're going to go through, I don't know, the 26th, I think. But it's a pretty short one. It'll probably go faster than that. Phew! I think that's it. Phew. By the time you see this video, it'll be Saturday morning, but there is 4 to 8 inches of snow scheduled for my area of the woods this afternoon. So it's going to be interesting to see what we have on Sunday morning. And we've got the shovels ready to go. I think my husband tested the snowblower already. That's ready to go. I know where all the boots are and the coats and the gloves and all of that. So let's see what happens. I don't think it's going to last very long because the weather looks decent for next week. But we'll see. That's it for me. Just trying to wrap up the Christmas Christmas shenanigans. Yeah. Hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're getting ready for the holidays if you're celebrating Christmas. We've already been through Thanksgiving and Hanukkah. So here we go with, here we go with the last big one for the year. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know what you think of any of the books I was talking about, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.